We've got a building site right behind the garden and a music rehearsal space next door, so yeah, it can be noisy in the garden. So now for something completely different. It's hop picking time here in the UK. This might explain one of the reasons why I haven't done very much on my CNC aluminium cutting video for a while. So this is a great day for hop picking. You want it to be ideally nice and warm and sunny, because if the hops is damp, then it won't store well. I'm only going to store this for a couple of days before I brew, so it's going to be a kind of fresh hop brew that I do this time. Hops grows really well, at least against this nice warm wall in the garden here. This actually was started off from 2 pieces of rootstock, 2 rhizomes that I bought from the UK. That is, I'm in the UK. I bought it probably relatively locally. The rhizomes just turned up in some, wrapped up in some newspaper. Just planted them in the spring, and by the end of the first year I had a decent crop. By the end of the second year they look pretty much as they do now, which is gigantic. This wall is roughly 4 meters tall, to give you an idea of how large this is. And this is probably enough for tens of gallons of beer. Of course, for the beer you also have to buy malt extracts and maybe some specialty grains for flavouring. If you want to be really cheap, you can get spray malt. That's actually the main expense of brewing beer, but to grow hops yourself to brew with is very satisfying. Those 2 bags hanging on the line there in themselves are probably enough for about 15 gallons of beer, which is I think it must be more than 100 pints at least, which is probably more than any sane human being could ever drink, even in a year. Okay, maybe in a year. Got my sun hat so I don't get heat stroke while I'm out here. I've got a pillowcase tucked into my belt, just a clean new pillowcase, which I found is the best way to collect the hops as you're picking, because you can just get them, put them straight in the pillowcase. Working out when to pick the hops is a bit of a black art, actually. I think I've always picked them a bit too late, at least for the way that they develop in the UK. I always pick them around end of September time in London, bearing in mind London is a bit warmer probably than further north areas. But this is a perfect hop. It's got no brown on it, and it will kind of spring back. It will spring back when you press down on it like that. So the ideal time to pick it is when it's still springy, but it doesn't get too brown. Obviously different hops will age at different times on the same plant. You're never going to get perfect hops to pick all at the same time. This has started to get these kind of brown areas on it. So at least in my first few batches of beer I won't put any like that in, because it kind of starts to get a more musty flavour to it. So this is the easiest way that I found to pick. Just go for a nice bunch which has been in full sun, so it's sort of nice and dry, because even overnight the dew seems to get into these quite a lot and make them damp, so they won't store well. But after this is about midday or 11:30, they've been in full sun probably for a few hours, and it's already nice and dried out. Just putting that load straight into that pillowcase. Nice load of hops building up in there. You can see how many there are on this plant. This is just 2 vines that I started off about 4 years ago, and they've really settled in nicely against this black wall here, which really keeps the heat during the day. And you can't actually see it at the moment, but they're growing up ropes up the wall. Ideally I should have made it so you could maybe unhook close to the top and then let the whole bunch down and pick it on the ground, but At the moment I'm on a ladder and it's a long way down. I think that's the main rule of hop picking, is don't look down. These are Fuggles hops, which is I believe a British variety, which is good for both aroma and bittering. So obviously to preserve the aroma, you want to use them fresh if possible. Now I'm done picking, because I have it all in this pillowcase right here. All I need to do is gather it up and hang it on the washing line. Maybe just for the rest of the day in the full sun, and that should start the drying process. Because I'm going to use these within a few days, this is probably all that's necessary. I've kind of gone in for quite elaborate drying solutions in the past, and this just seems to be the easiest, quickest way to do it. And I can probably just store them in this exact same pillowcase for maybe 3-4 more days without any rot setting in, because the whole thing just lets the air blow through. So this is a machine I built a few years ago to dry my hops for longer term storage. I'm not going to use it this year because I'm going to use the hops almost fresh. I kind of built this in a hurry when I first needed it, because I basically hadn't planned ahead. I needed to preserve a lot of hops. I needed to kind of get them before they went rotten. But all these are frames that I cut on a chop saw at roughly 45 degrees, stapled them together at the joints, and stapled in this food safe wire mesh in the base of the frames. If I take the frames out, you may be able to see the inside bits. Obviously I would put the hops on each of these layers, try to leave a bit of space around them to let the air through. So inside here is just a small standard electric heater, just the sort you put on the floor. It would normally be, this is kind of turned on its side, it would normally be flat on the floor. You'd just turn it on to warm up a room in winter or something. In front of it is a little thermistor on a little kind of rigid wire arm there. The reason I put it there is because that seemed to be the most consistent area of temperature inside the whole thing. And right behind it at the back there's a fan to keep consistent airflow. It kind of moderates the temperature of the electric heater, because you're really only looking for around 30 degrees or less to dry hops. You're not trying to cook them, it's just to get as much moisture out as possible. I could have just bought a food dehydrator, but I was kind of in a rush and I didn't want to spend the money. The outside of it is just literally metal baking trays that I bought in the pound shop. I just drilled holes and kind of tied them tightly together with wire. The whole thing is very crudely made, but it cost me very little money to make this. This is a control box with an Arduino connected to the thermistor. These are also connected to the analog ports on the Arduino. In practice, just with this, I was only using one of these, but the setup can actually take 2 independent thermistors and 2 independent control knobs. It's actually hooked up to these wires coming out of there. Go to, that's the power in. I think I'm kind of halfway through dismantling this, but it did have a power out, which is connected to the heater. And it's a very simple kind of circuit. It literally just switches the heater on when the temperature drops, and it switches the heater off when the temperature gets too high. But because it's got the fan blowing air through, it wasn't too unstable. It managed to retain a temperature, but of course, because it's a thermistor, you don't have an absolute temperature value, so I just had to adjust the knob, the control knob, while I stuck a a normal thermometer inside the mouth of the machine, and just kind of managed to adjust this to where I got roughly 30 degrees or something like that. I'm not going to go into the electronic side of it because, I mean, basically this whole thing is a bit sketchy. I bought it a few years ago to do a job. I wasn't intending to really give it to anybody because I know how to use this safely, maybe others may not, and if you're not comfortable with mains wiring, this is not a good project to show you how it's done. But it's safe to say there's a mains capable relay in here, connected via a transistor to the Arduino, and that's all there is to it. And a very simple Arduino sketch that just converts the thermistor reading into a rough temperature reading, compares it with the ideal set temperature, and then turns the relay on or off. Well, as always, I hope you found that interesting. I know it's not strictly an electronics video, but I think it just goes to show that with just a very few simple, crude skills, you can patch something together to help you in many different situations. Although I didn't choose to use it this year, my hop dehydrator has preserved quite a lot of hops. Anyway, if you're watching this channel just because of the CNC machining stuff that I do promise there will be another CNC video out very soon about cutting aluminium on my acrylic CNC router. It is taking ages to get together.